Welcome to Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution with Kevin Brown and Tom Burton. Sponsored each week by LeadSmart Technologies, Tom, Kevin, and their guests review the news of the week and dive deep into the topics impacting manufacturers, wholesale distribution, independent sales agents, and the global wholesale supply chain. Whether it's M&A, SaaS and cloud computing, B2B e-commerce, or supply chain issues, we peel back the onion with our guests into the topics that impact your business the most.
Do you forget to dance? Do you forget to drum?
Enjoyed the music, but today is not a dancing day.
No, you sound a little stuffed up, or kind of, I don't know. You just got out of bed.
Yeah, that's it. Just rolled into the office from. I am at my home office, like I always do the podcast from.
You're good. You look well dressed and hair combed and everything. That's impressive.
My hair is combed.
You didn't shave, but that's all right.
No shaving. No shaving for a while. You know, people.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, nobody cares about my facial hair, right? So, but I do have a cold coming on. But you know, the show must go on, right?
That's right.
That is it. So good. Hey, well, we're going to talk a little bit today about tariffs. We're going to talk a little bit about the economy. We're going to talk about some M&A stuff. We're going to talk about some technology like we always do. And you know what? They stopped minting the penny this week.
They stopped minting the penny, yeah. It was costing, it was costing 1.76.
Oh, wait, let's get to the article before you do that.
Oh, this is like a teaser. Right?
Okay, good.
And I have another teaser, which is, you know, we've been arguing for several weeks, I guess.
We debate.
We've been debating for several weeks on this tariff refund thing, right? And you thought no one's going to give refunds, and I said they were, but we both agreed that it was going to be a pain. And then we have an article today that says, no, it'll be easy.
Right. But then I have all the rebuttal articles stacked up for when we're ready to discuss it.
Okay.
Right? So it was funny. I was doing an interview yesterday with the senior marketing person to join our company, and she's been watching the podcast and had some ideas. And she said she loved that we I think she used the term banter, but so spirited debate sometimes. Sometimes I just think you're full of it. Sometimes I'm full of it, but maybe that's part of the allure.
That's right.
So that's good.
All right, let's get on with it. We got a lot to cover.
You know what time zone are you in? Because you can't be in Pacific time because it looks like you're in the dark.
I am in the dark. The room is very dark. It's raining. It's dark, and I figure I should be going back to bed, but no, I'm here.
It's that kind of weather, huh?
Yeah.
So for those of you who,
2 days,
what's that?
It's going to be like that for the next 2 or 3 days. So.
Yeah, probably. I think for us 3 is what's scheduled. I have to be down a good part of tomorrow. I have to be down southern San Diego County, which is about an hour and 20 minutes for me here. And I'm not looking forward to that commute down to some meetings there tomorrow. But that's life. It's good thing we have these opportunities in front of us. So before we just bore people to death with why are these two guys rambling on, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Kevin Brown. I'm here with my lifelong friend and business partner, Tom Burton, and we get together every Friday morning unless someone's in the hospital, on an airplane, or on a planned vacation. And we chat about the happenings of the news of the week related to things like artificial intelligence and robotics and mergers and acquisitions and sales and marketing and digital marketing and e-commerce and supply chain issues and all kinds of things. And what we do is we get together and have that discussion. Oftentimes we have guests to come and join us with this as well. And we talk about not just those topics, but how do those topics relate to manufacturing and wholesale distribution, which is the audience that we address in this show. Hence our title, Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. So we love it when folks are with us. If you're joined us today and you're live with us this morning on it's 9 o'clock or 9:05 Pacific, and Tom is up in Ventura, California, and I'm down in South Orange County, California. And we do this every week, again, live on YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, and Facebook Live. And then later today, our editor and producer, John Taylor, will put all this together and get this up on Spotify and Apple and Odyssey and Amazon and all the podcast platforms, wherever you would want to see it. I think we're at like 30-something right now and that the podcast gets out to. So whether you're listening live and or listening to the recording later in the day, we're appreciative of you being with us. But if you are listening and not watching, you won't see the newsletter that Tom will have up on the screen shortly, and we'll go back and forth to referencing those articles. We send out this newsletter every week to around 10,000 people, and it highlights all of those topical areas that I mentioned previously. And we usually just post 3 to 5 articles that are relevant to the economy and supply chain, as an example, or mergers and acquisitions and sales and so forth. So we have those articles. We curate those each week. It's the ones we like and think are interesting, and we get together on the show and talk about those articles. So if you'd like to get that newsletter and you don't, there's 3 simple ways to do it. You can just, if you're active on LinkedIn, you can certainly just search Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing Podcast. You can go to the LeadSmart Technologies homepage on LinkedIn, and you'll see the link to the newsletter is there, as well as there's some snippet recordings or shorts of our weekly show are there as well. And you can find, actually, there's a whole homepage as well for the show on LinkedIn. If you'd like to send an email, very simple. We get many of those every week. Just send an email to hello@leadsmarttech.com, or we have a website for the podcast, and it's www.aroundthehornpod.com. www.aroundthehornpod.com. You can click on the link for your favorite way to watch the show and sign up on Apple or Spotify or whatever it might be. And you can also leave us a note to get the newsletter, sign up for it there. It's right front and center, getting the newsletter. So we'd love to share that with you. I've mentioned a number of times, though, in our discussion this morning so far, LeadSmart Technologies, that's the company that Tom and I work for, and both work together to found that company. And they're the sole and only current sponsor of the show. It's the only one we want out there. And what we do at LeadSmart is we've developed what we describe as a AI-enabled customer intelligence and smart CRM solution that's solely built for wholesale distributors and manufacturers. So we don't sell to construction companies. We don't sell to offices. We don't sell to dental practices. We only and solely work with wholesale distributors and manufacturers. Tom brings to the table in starting that company over 30 years of experience in computer science and technology and software development. And he's been involved in many companies like ours. And I've spent my entire career in wholesale distribution and manufacturing. So we brought our thoughts together and developed the technology that the market was missing. So if you're thinking right now about how am I going to leverage AI, what do I do with all this data that I have? I don't know where my salespeople could be doing more. We miss quotes that are closing. We have white space or categories that we're not selling consistently. Reach out to us. We'd love to share with you how we can solve those problems, close those gaps, bring siloed data from across your business together into one single place where you can use the latest technology and AI and other tools to maximize the understanding of what's happening at your customer, your team, and your overall business to accelerate growth in your company. We'd love nothing more than to chat with you about that. You can reach us at 833-532-3832, or just pop us a note at hello@leadsmarttech.com. We're very easy to find there, and you can certainly find Tom and I on LinkedIn very easily as well. So, Tom, I think I covered it all. Oh, you know what I didn't ask for? Folks, if you're with us, if you like what we do, leave us a review wherever you're listening, specifically if you're on the podcast, Apple, Spotify. Click the follow button, subscribe button, and leave us a review, and that'll get us out in front of more of your friends. And if you get the newsletter and you like it, send it on to friends that you think might like it as well.
I love the 833. So call now at 833.
I just started doing that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I wanted to say good morning to Brian and the OC down by you and Mr. Judge in Florida. So check in if you're here. Definitely love to hear from everybody.
Appreciate Dan being with us. I got to see Dan's brilliant and lovely daughter, Jennifer Murphy, at the Industrial Supply Association event a couple weeks ago. Spent some time with Zach there as well from Net Plus Alliance at that event. In fact, I think Zach had told me Dan had just jumped on a plane and headed to Florida. So good to have you, and always good to see Brian. Appreciate you being with us as well. I'm sure there's a lot of others we'll hear from shortly too. So, hey, the economy. Want to talk about that a little bit? Looks like we've got the longest U.S. government shutdown in history taken care of now.
Taken care of. Just like the Polymarket said, they said it would be solved between the highest probability, I think, was between the 10th and the 15th or something last week.
There we go. Nailed it. There we
go. The crowd wins again.
Yeah. It's interesting how accurate those things are, huh?
Yeah. Well, we have some more to cover today. It'll be interesting to see how they come out. But it's so as I think everybody knows, right, the shutdown was ended, but I don't know if I'd call it ended or more delayed, maybe possibly.
Kick the can down the road, but we got getting people paid and benefits out.
January 31st. So basically what's happened is they've reopened and allocated enough budget through the January 31st. So obviously the big question is this going to happen again in January? Because really none of the key items that, at least from the Democratic perspective, they were looking for in this really got addressed or solved, or at least they didn't get what they were looking for. So obviously, I think both sides we're recognizing that this was causing a lot more impact than maybe they had originally anticipated, especially as it kind of spilled over into the air traffic world and all of that. But interesting on the Polymarket, right? Will there be another government shutdown by January 31? Only 27% is saying that there will be another shutdown, meaning that the majority tends to believe that this is somehow going to get all resolved before the 31st of January.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting point, right? And looking at that, I think it's valuable to take a look at it. You can keep that up if you wouldn't mind for a minute, Tom, the Polymarket. So just as a reminder for those of you that are listening and not watching, we have our live screen here up and we're looking at the Polymarket. Polymarket started out as an online betting resource, but really it's turned into a prediction market for coming events that has been extremely accurate. And Tom has that up on the screen right now. But you know what I think is unique about this is, and it's really sad, right? If you can think about this a little bit more, as the rhetoric that's in Washington is, it's like mankind can't even, get out of their own way to get things organized and structured well without arguing and fighting over this stuff. And the stuff that, both sides obviously have critical points, right? But at the end of the day, they should be able to come together if they're truly wanting to try and serve the people to solve these things versus the lashing back and forth. And it was an interesting thing is you've got one side that's saying, hey, we need to reduce spending and we need to balance the budget. And we need to do some things. And another side is saying, no, we need to keep the benefits and the healthcare benefits from the Obama era in place. And one side saying, no, we're going to modify those. We think we can make them better. And everybody's digging in their heels, right? But this in particular issue, in fact, Darlene and I were talking about this the other night, was that, this is, we think about filibuster, from, old time movies and stuff of a senator that gets up and talks for 24 hours to push a vote out or whatever it might be. But in this setting, the filibuster is about the vote being different, right? And so rather than just
requires 60, exactly. 60-40.
Right.
Versus just a majority.
Right. So in this setting, we had, 7, I think, Democrats came across the aisle on this, and one Republican voted against it. So now you've kind of got this question is, does this change the Democrats' bargaining power, so to speak? And I don't know the answer to that, but what I did hear on the radio the other day, I was listening, it's interesting. We have, smack in the middle between where you live and I live in Orange County and you live in Ventura County, is Los Angeles County. And Los Angeles County's mayor could probably not have more of a leftist mayor than they do. It's just a former Democratic congresswoman. And she said, I was shocked. A reporter asked, I'm surprised she said anything or answered the question. A reporter asked her the question about, the government opening back up. And she was saying that she's happy about it and the benefits coming back to the, needed residents of LA County and the jobs being available again and so forth. But they asked her, I said, which side won? And she said, well, the Republicans won. And it really shocked me that she would acknowledge it. Now, she said, she went on with I don't want to say rhetoric, but just her viewpoint of, the negative of all of that. But she said, no, the Republicans won. Yeah. And it was kind of interesting to see that acknowledged. So the question, I think, comes, and I think that's why the Polymarket probably is so low on this, right, of only a 27% chance, is, look, now you're in a position that says, okay, and I'm not suggesting for one second which side's right or wrong. I think that you could find great fault with both positions in this, but it is interesting from a negotiating standpoint now, is you've got one side that said, okay, we'll agree, because the Republicans have been saying all along, let's just open the government and work through these things. In fact, I think they even said on a couple of topics related to the Obamacare thing is pick one of these and we'll give you that right off the bat, right? Just come in and let's get the government open. Now, I'm sure part of that is just politicking, right? From a standpoint of, we're the ones saying, let's get it open and work through this. And the other ones saying, no, we're not going to do this until you guarantee us something. I think I do agree with this. I think there's a very high likelihood now that we kind of broke the seal on this. And now it's like, if you don't, and I think it's particularly right now in the Democrats' court, is if you don't come to the table and be really willing to negotiate, you could look pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't want another government shutdown.
No, of course not.
It's obviously not good for anybody, but I would take this bet if from just a betting perspective. I think the probability is much higher than 27%.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, would it be a long government shut, or whatever it was before, 40 days or whatever it is? No, I certainly wouldn't bet on that. But do I think it's going to be resolved and handled, and there will be nothing before January 31st? I think the probability is not as I think the probability of a shutdown is higher than what they're saying here, from my opinion. So if I were a betting person on this, I would definitely take the over. And
what do you think it is?
If I had to put it, I think it's more 60% there will be some form of a shutdown, and 40% there won't. Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think there was a lot of capitulation and giving in on some of these things, but I also think that they're gonna. I don't know. I really am trying to.
What's going to cause it if it's 60%? Who's going to do what to cause that?
Well, it's the same thing, right? There won't be an agreement, right? There's not going to be an agreement, and we won't get the 60 votes and so forth to get through the system. So. And there's talk of changing the filibuster or removing the filibuster law, but that requires a filibuster agreement for that to occur. And they said there's no way that there's any chance of that likely happening before January 31st.
Well, so, the filibuster only benefits the party that doesn't have the majority, right? So you're never gonna get agreement on that from any side. The reality of it is that this administration, the Republicans are wanting that, but to get rid of it, but they would want to have it if they were the minority.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing with that. I guess the question though that comes from that, you're saying over double the likelihood of a shutdown versus Polymarket is, if you're right, then we should probably stop using Polymarket on the show.
I guess so. We should probably use
just go to you should just go do your own prediction market site.
I think you're right. That's a great idea.
You should go vibe code a prediction market over. Don't do that. You have way too many other important things to do over the weekend. But sometime soon you should go vibe code a Tom's prediction market.
It's a good idea, actually. Yes, I think so. And compare them, and then we can arbitrage between the two differences.
Well, we can use it here on the show and watch our ratings just fall to the floor.
That's right.
Right.
So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. All right, I'll make a. So it's what does it say right now?
27, and you're saying 60%,
which is actually down significantly over the last period of time. I believe that this number will be higher when we get together next Friday.
Okay. It's a lot of predictions you're making. What I'm going to suggest is much more likely is at 11 p.m. Eastern time on the 31st, they have this breakthrough deal.
Okay. All right.
Because that's what always happens, other than, it's pretty rare that we have the shutdowns like we've seen, right? Yeah. It's always a last minute budget agreement, right? Reached in the Senate and blah, 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 blah. So,
I could see them kicking the can down the road again for another couple months too. So, and maybe that's part of what this is, but all right, let's move ahead to another important topic, which is rate cuts.
Okay.
So 2 federal officials oppose December interest rate cut. December meeting is December 10th. So it's a little less than a month away, 3 weeks away or so. You've seen the stock market whining about that. What I don't, and I did a little homework on this because I'm struggling to understand, it only requires a majority vote. So there's 12 board members in there.
Did they replace the one?
Sorry?
Did they replace the missing one?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And they said there will be 12 at the meeting on December 10th,
okay.
12 governors. So all you need is 7 to vote for a rate cut, and you get a rate cut. You could have 5 dissenters, and you're not going to, and it's going to matter. So everyone seems to get worked up about 2 people at least expressing some opposition. I don't know if they've said for sure they would vote one way or the other, but to me, I still think there will be a majority of people that are more majority of the governors that are doing that. And let's see here. What is again, Polymarket on this Fed decision in September, 45%, and no change 52. So this changed a little bit. It's gone up a little bit in the last day or so, but basically this is saying 50-50, more or less, that there'll be an increase versus no increase.
All right. Well, you're in the prognosticating mode. What's it going to be? Nostradamus?
Oh, I think it's higher. I would definitely take the bet on the 25 basis point decrease.
Yeah.
I think it's more like even 70%. But anyway, that's my thought. You could prognosis on the Burton market.
Well, you could do the 50 basis point bet and take the other side of that and win really, really big. If that were to happen, just like that I
don't think is going to happen.
Just like the investment fund, it's like the investment fund that shorted the AI stocks this week.
That's right.
Right. That's pretty powerful stuff. So, okay, good. Well, let's see what comes of that next. I think, the reality of it is, this article talks about this, an article from Industrial Distribution magazine, but they pulled together a bunch of statistics, right? We've been 5 years now that have been above the, 2% target. So, the Kevin market says that 2% is the wrong number. That's what my belief is. And so we'll see. But, we're just back here in the, in the medical world, we're thinking about we're in ventricular fibrillation where things are just fluttering, right? It's little up, little down, little up, little down of the job market, of the interest rates and so forth. And, we need something that comes in here and becomes a little more significant. So yeah. Let's jump in. We got a few articles here. One a really nice article that our friend Mark Brohan wrote about the effective U.S. tax rate hit 17.9% and what it means for distributors. It's a good article. CNBC has an article about importers say Trump tariff repayment would be messy.
That's the article we were talking about. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And there's a few of those. So why don't we kind of jump in on this a little bit? Mark had some good things to say in that article. He pulled some things together says the budget lab at Yale University estimates the average effective U.S. tariff rate climbed to 17.9% as of October 30th, its highest level since 1934. And that's really tying the mix of duties that are now in force under the Liberation Day fallout. So it says the lab models are at 1.3% rise in overall price level in the near term is going with that. So it's a kind of interesting, we're seeing, I think what this is really tying together a lot of this for me is that when you start looking at the balancing act, and this is a conversation I had with an international manufacturer, the European company I talked to a couple of weeks ago at an event. They said they're really doing the same thing here, right? They're looking across their business at where their tariffs are and where they're going, and then what product categories have the most profitability, where can they raise, where can they eat a little bit of it themselves, and they're balancing that out. So I think we're seeing a lot of that on the manufacturer side. I think the distributors are, for the most part, just pushing those directly across, but the manufacturers have that flexibility of kind of where can we eat a little bit here, where can we eat a little bit there. But it makes me kind of think back to the conversation that, this was, I don't know, we'd have to go back and look, is at least 6 months ago, we were talking with John Gunderson about this, and John was a guest on the show, and got to spend some time with John last week as well in Memphis at the ISA event. And, he was saying that, I don't think he was describing this as an opportunity, but you could look at it as if we're all there's varying degrees of impact that this will have on distributors. And distributors that manage their inventory really well, that have strong pricing positions already in the market, that maybe were able to pre-buy and then have, we'll say leverage, but have a position with manufacturers where, they buy enough and they've got a strong position with them in their partnership where they can consistently get product, maybe staying at the front of the line of who's getting product. You can kind of balance this act out to not have the impact that it's going to have some other people, right? I think the people that are really going to struggle potentially with this are the folks that, and I've not talked to anybody about this yet, and I need to, it's just an opinion, but if you're buying most of your goods with, a smaller company and you do a lot of your business through a wholesaler that you're buying through versus being direct with the factory, you probably are going to be in a much worse position, not even just from a pricing standpoint, but even availability.
Yeah, so I assume this doesn't mean that every there's 17.9% price increase on everything, right? What it's saying is the tariffs rate are 17.9%. Yeah. How that gets
passed on is different.
Right. How that gets massaged along the way is very different. So, and then what does that affect as the bottom line? Right. He also mentioned there, though, if the tariffs were to be deemed illegal, it would immediately drop down the tariff rate, the average tariff rate would drop down to about 9% across and again, these are across all countries, all scenarios. Yep. Right. I didn't really know if it's weighted too. I mean, obviously you'd have more weighting. So I don't know if he's averaging out. I guess he's averaging out the total amount of tariffs paid. So not really just how much it is for each country, but how much has been paid. Yeah. So that would inherently take out the weighting inherently include the weighting of the different countries.
And this is Mark's review of the Yale University estimates that were put out from their budget lab study, right? He was kind of refining this, breaking it down, as Mark does a phenomenal job for us, distilling things well in that setting. But, I think the interesting thing, right, is I think you said it was 9% is that it would come down to, but okay, that this just goes back to I think that people aren't necessarily paying attention to, and we've talked about it over and over again on this broadcast, is that, look, this isn't the Supreme Court wanting to strike down tariffs, right? But that's what, if you watch the mainstream news, that's what this often will sound like. They're going to strike down tariffs. It's not the discussion. The discussion is, was the methodology used, right? Mm-hmm. The Emergency Powers Act, was that legal to use that in the way that it was used? Mm-hmm. And as you did a really nice job of breaking down last week, and we've done many times previously, there's 3 or 4 other methodologies. They will take long, but I just do not, I would never bet against this administration in particular, that they don't have everything already in the works of how they're going to work with the other ones.
Hey, Bob is with us, and he wants to know why your voice is so much deeper. Bob, Kevin just got out of bed like 2 minutes before we got in here, and so he's still kind of waking up. He hasn't had his coffee yet. That's what's going on. So it's okay.
Nice of you to notice, Bob. I appreciate that. Bob's a regular listener, and some great comments, and we've featured some of Bob's writings on the show and some of our articles.
We needed a deeper voice here. We kind of needed to balance out my squeaky, pitchy voice with a more deeper baritone on it.
The reality of it is, Bob, is that it's hard to keep up with Tom, and he's had me on the road for 5 weeks, and I finally came home and got sick. So that's the reality of it. But I'm fighting through it, right?
Yeah. That's
right. I'm going to fight through it. So all right. So let's get talking about this. What's going to happen? Let's assume, right, that the Supreme Court says, nope, you used the wrong statute for putting tariffs in. We have to
get a Polymarket kick today. Let's hit a couple of these first while we go through there, right? So the Polymarket on the tariffs, the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the tariffs, and again, just to your point, the legality of the tariffs, is only 25% that they will rule in favor and saying that it was in fact illegal. So
I think it's higher.
People are saying they are going to be ruled as illegal.
I think it's higher, but
you think the chance? I agree with you. I agree with this. I think the chance is higher, but it's dropped significantly over the last, say, couple of weeks from 44% down to 25%. Remember that this ruling is not going to take place until likely early next year, sometime along the way. But there was a second one here, which, will the court force Trump to refund the tariffs? So this is a court. So in other words, will
this
the court...
This is the most interesting Polymarket we've seen today.
Yeah. So will they force... So this isn't, will anybody get their money back? This is saying, will the court, in fact, rule that the tariffs will need... I mean, the tariffs will need to be refunded. There's only a 10% chance here on that.
What's your thinking on that? I'm shocked that it's that low. Let me rephrase that. I would tend to agree but I would have thought this would have been 50%.
So what this is saying is the court could rule the tariffs are illegal or were illegally obtained through this act. Yep. However, there is no refunds, or there will not be any refunds based on what has been collected so far.
And this is saying there's only a 10% chance that they'll say that they have to be refunded.
That's right. That's what it's saying.
I would have thought this would have been much higher. I'm glad you got this one. Thank you.
I would agree too. And I haven't researched this enough to know, but I would assume there is probably a lot of lobbying going on to say, hey, okay, even if these are ruled, or the mechanism was ruled illegal, right, there is a big impact of refunding everything that we've done so far. So maybe meet in the middle and say, hey, yeah, these were, we can't continue with this, but we're not going to be required to refund everything up to this point. Now, again, I don't know the legal basis of that. Obviously, if the Supreme Court rules that, then I don't know there's a whole lot of places to go. But anyway, I think it's an interesting, the two are not necessarily connected directly.
Well, I think that's the key with this, right? Is that in well, we say all the time on the show that we're not economists as we talk about this stuff, but it's even more so we're not lawyers. We pay lawyers way too much, but we're not lawyers. So I guess my struggle with this is because what you just described to me is common sense, would be common sense, right? Common sense would say, hey, look, let me rephrase this. My line of thinking, I'm not going to say common sense. My common sense would suggest, hey, look, there's all of these other methodologies. These tariffs are going to come through because there's the other means of doing it over at some period of time. If that's the case, and these numbers are still going to be what the numbers are, right? Then, and it's going to have a major impact on the country, right? On the budget, on everything else too, if we were going to try and repay this, plus the probably billions of dollars it would cost to try and administer it, plus the legal battles that would go on over and over again. Common sense just says, hey, you know what? Maybe all those companies should get a small tax break or something like that based on what they've paid, and let's move on with the day.
Yeah, there was some talk about credits, like tax no refunds, so but maybe get some credits on some other things, right? So I think there's other ways to potentially,
But the other side of that is, I think from the way the Supreme Court has to adjudicate this is not about the common sense and what is likely to happen. It's solely the issue, I believe, the issue in front of them was this legal or illegal? Right. Which, if that's the case, and then you put 1 + 1 = 3, the discussion of what common sense is saying, look, we don't have to rule on whether they're paid back or not. So why don't we just make a decision that says that's for the better of everybody? The decision that's in front of us is, are they legal or illegal? Nobody has brought the case to us. Do we have to decide whether they have to be refunded? So they may just stay quiet on the issue of repayment and only rule on the legality of it. Could be. You heard it here first.
Which then leaves which then comes back to this article, right? So again, just to re-baseline, again, per the Polymarket, 77% chance per the Polymarket that the tariffs will be ruled, or the vehicle of the tariffs will be ruled illegal. 90% on the Polymarket that they will not edict them refunding. right? And yes, they could stay silent, to your point. So that would either be they come out and say, no, you don't need to refund, or they stay silent. Now, let's go back to this article, right? So this article was kind of different viewpoints, but American importers say that if the Supreme Court rules that the money they paid for Trump's tariff must be refunded, it would be relatively simple to do and not the mess as some that have claimed it would be. Right. Now, we've talked about, both of us have agreed over the last few weeks that it would be a mess, or we thought it would be a mess. But some of these manufacturers say, no, I have all the receipts here. I have everything's all itemized. It'd just be like submitting my income tax, right? And getting a refund. What's the big deal? Right.
Best wishes.
Or it could be the thing that's there. So anyway, it's I thought it was interesting that at least maybe that's wishful thinking that it wouldn't be a mess, but in their mind, it would be like, hey, here's my receipts. Here's what we've done. And hey, pay me back.
Yeah. So I did a little research this morning about that too. I had a conversation with Perplexity about this. And, the question, so my question was, if the Supreme Court strikes down the administration's current tariffs, how will the money be paid back? Is it even possible or legally required? And this is a mix of law school comments, websites from legal firms that specialize in tariffs and taxations, CNN, all different types, and then some government websites as well. It's just describes, if the Supreme Court strikes down the Trump administration's current tariffs, a large-scale refund process could be triggered, requiring the U.S. government to return billions collected from importers. Legally, whether refunds are required depends on how the court's decision is written and the specifics of the federal customs law. If the tariffs are ruled unlawful, the expectation is that refunds would be paid back to the original importers who bore the tariff costs. But the practical process could be slow, complex, and possibly contentious. So a couple things that go with this. First off, is it legally required? The Supreme Court decision invalidating the tariffs could require the government to halt tariff collections immediately and potentially repay the collected funds. But only if the ruling is broad and very explicit. So this kind of goes back to the point is they have to put a lot of time and energy and work into not just you have to pay it back, but probably be very explicit in methodology and means. So then it says, well, how would it be paid back? And it suggests, and they combined 3 different articles from legal firms and then some other news articles. So the most likely scenario is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency would administer the refund process. In most cases, importers would need to affirmatively file for refunds. Automatic payments would not be expected at all unless the Supreme Court mandated explicitly that they would be that way. Importers who have previously filed administrative protests or other claims before the tariff entries are finalized would have the best chance at any type of quick recovery. Disputes may arise if supply contracts had tariff pass-through clauses, blah, 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 blah. So it is, I don't care how you slice it, it would be messy. It then goes on as the beauty of doing shows like this is becoming easier and easier with the AI tools that we have, right?
To the AI say, these are great questions, Kevin. These are brilliant things that you're asking here.
So if you start to see my ego growing, it is because, I am constantly being told by AI how smart I am. Wow, I would have never thought of that. Let's look into that.
That salad made out of French fries is a brilliant idea.
Yes. But it said, this is the economic and legal challenges. It said repaying tens of billions of tariffs would strain the U.S. Treasury resources, potentially requiring extra borrowing and generate disputes about who is entitled to the money, especially if the cost was passed along to the supply chain already, right? So think about that. You brought this up, I think, a while back, right? So if I'm a wholesale distributor and manufacturer ABC has raised their prices because of tariffs, and I think this would, think about this, right? This could make a really, really big deal about how you chose to pass them along. If you did a broad price increase, it would be very difficult for a distributor to want to participate in this. if a distributor was purchasing from a manufacturer and that manufacturer put a line item in particular into their new invoices or their new pricing updates that is anything remotely showing that it's relating to tariffs, now they could go back and want to go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, I want this money back. And the manufacturer is going to go, I don't have the money, right? And then I can't give it to you. I mean, this is for anybody to even remotely think that this could work easily, which is why I just keep going back to the wise thing would be is, I mean, the money that and just think about it, right? I mean, we have, both manufacturers and distributors as customers at LeadSmart, and imagine the work that this would entail, right? One, if you're a distributor just now, saying, well, we'd like to capture some of this money back. And then if let's just say you're an HVAC distributor, and now your contractor says, well, wait a minute, you put a line item that says tariff increase. So the magnitude of the import, this is really just, I mean, I don't know if you can tell by my voice, this is triggering all kinds of new stuff for me right now from past conversations that we've had.
Sure.
Because if you're a manufacturer and you just did an increase, but let's say you're a distributor and you chose to reword that in your wording on your invoices to your customers, and you put tariff, and then tariffs are supposed to be repaid, you could have a contractor that comes back to you and says, hey, you owe me money because I paid you these numbers that you put on my invoice. And if you're a distributor and the manufacturer didn't word it the same where the manufacturer didn't,
So, yeah, and look, I get it. There's a whole trickle down waterfall.
But it's ugly. I mean, it's
ugly.
It just got much uglier for me as we went through this.
No, I think it's uglier. And
I need to go back to bed.
The only one that really could, but realistically, the only one that could actually get any money back would be the original supplier or the person who purchased it. But, because yes, you can sit here and point fingers all the way down
Absolutely.
The supply chain and the waterfall there. And I don't think it's going to do any good. Before we wrap up, because I think Bob's bringing up a point here that I think is really important for us to just clarify, right? What he's saying is the Supreme Court is only going to rule on the Emergency Economic Powers Act. Right? They're not going to go in some broad thing related to tariffs. It's either this act, was it legal or was it not legal to employ this act that's here? That's what they're going to rule on. And yes, we've talked about this over and over. There's other ways to implement tariffs, whether it's the Trade Expansion Act, the Trade Act, the different ones that have been out there. But they're not going to rule on that. They're going to rule on just the one that's at hand.
Well, hang on a second, Tom. Just pause. We don't know that. And that's what these articles were saying. What Bob is saying is they tend to, and I agree with that, and I agree with what you're saying, they have the ability to broaden that.
Yeah, I just don't think that's not what they've been asked to do.
Correct. Right. But it wouldn't surprise me if things are amended or somebody wants to go back to them on these things, right? Yeah. Because I think there's none of us are wrong in these statements. I think the issue is, what will they do? Right. Bob's point, if I understand him correctly, is saying that they tend to really narrow the scope of what's in front of them and stay out of the fringe type stuff, right?
Right.
And I agree. Bob is saying the same thing that we kind of talked about earlier, which is probably tied back to that 10% component of. I see you've got, 70% the likelihood is in Polymarket that they'll strike down that it was illegal, but only 10% that says they'll want to get the repayments. And, I think that's probably wise. And then Bob mentions too, the other options that they can do. There's 3 or 4 different options that they could bring up. So it's good. Well, it's going to be an interesting thing. You'll hear it here first. Come back every Friday.
Yeah. Because it'll change every week, but it'll be interesting to see if that 10% goes up. I think we're going to see that 10% going up a little bit, but I don't think it's going to get much higher, but I do think it's going to go up.
Well, what will come out of this, one thing that we know for sure, what will come out of this is we will have plenty to talk about on the Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution podcast. Right.
It's a good thing.
Yep.
It's a good thing because there's not much to talk about AI anymore.
Well, Bob doesn't like that.
Yeah. Well,
All right. What do you want to roll into next? We're going to manufacturing distribution. Anything exciting there?
Well, I think this first article, Walmart's OpenAI partnership signals a new era for wholesale. I think there's another Mark Brohan article, if I'm not mistaken. And
Mark's going to do some work with us soon too.
Yeah, really well put together article. I thought brought up some, really interesting food for thought. So what he's saying in there is that as you have agentic AI and more in using technology to drive the purchasing process, right? The supply chain needs to change to be much more nimble and much more responsive to kind of what he called, I think, microbursts was the word that he used, versus, hey, I'm going to put in a big order because I know in February people tend to buy these products, and so I'll make a big order for these things and so forth. Is you need to be a lot more nimble, is what I think he was getting at here.
For sure. And it just is one of the points of Mark's article here. And he did this for the distribution strategy group, our friends Jonathan and Ian and their team over there. He describes it as paragraphs titled "A New Demand Environment." Just to recap this a little bit deeper, it says historically distributors have depended on scheduled orders and predictable replenishment cycles, right? I know that I'm going to order these things because I have a specific level of demand on an ongoing basis. And I'm going to do this, in an ongoing general way that I do this. I've got this school district buys this from me. This contractor buys these things from me. And then I'm going to have some demand peaks based upon orders, but I know that those are coming from my quotes and bids. He says the Walmart OpenAI integration disrupts the rhythm that we would normally see. A customer must no longer browse or search. A simple conversation can lead to an instant purchase, right? And so we're going to see that every day. And, I've just spent the last 4 of the last 5 weeks with wholesale distributors day in and day out. And those that some have very advanced e-commerce, some have e-commerce that they, bought a package and got some data from their trade association, whoever it might be, and stood something up. And then others are knowing they need to go do that. And we talk about this all the time internally, right? One of your major journeys that you need to track. And it's so funny, making a plug a little bit for what we do at LeadSmart real quickly here is that, historically we've just used ERP data as the holy grail of customer journey in our business, if we're even thinking about customer journey, right? But your customer really has at least 4 journeys with you, right? They have a transactional journey that's in your ERP. They have a marketing journey, right? Whether it's what events did they come to, what promotions are they responding to, what emails did they open, what videos, links are they opening. That's a very significant journey that brings great signals into your business, right? We have an e-commerce journey. What are they looking at online? Are they abandoning shopping carts? Are they placing orders online at all? Right, that's another journey that can signify things for us. Then we have that personal interaction, the call in about a missed shipment, or the counter guy that has some data that he learned from the truck driver from your contractor that's coming in to pick up an order of pipe or lumber or whatever it might be. And then we have the sales guy's interaction, the data that they may put into the CRM. So we have kind of a personal journey in CRM, e-commerce, marketing, and ERP. And now we've got this, as we start seeing more and more of this purchasing, we need to be able to see that across the board to understand really what's going on in our customer. To Mark's point,
before you go any further, though, what they're saying here, right, on if you want to call it your e-commerce journey that you're talking about, right, a lot of that's being potentially driven by agentic actions or AI actions. So,
and is going to have major impact on your purchasing pressures.
Right. So it's, it will, again, that journey is now potentially have much more velocity, much more volume to it than you would if somebody on their own is on the website doing the shopping and so forth. It's there.
Right. Yep. Exactly right. So different pressures coming in. This is the next segment of the article talks about pressure on operations and logistics, right? Demand could change dramatically for things, right? So I think that the if I were to boil this all down and bring it all together in a quick recap is you need to be tracking and managing all of these things so that you can make sure you're maintaining your margin, you're maintaining your in stocks, right? The last thing you want to do is, because there's huge efficiencies that can come, especially from the commodity standpoint. If you could get customers placing commodity type orders online, lots of efficiencies come into the business at that point in time. And we're going to graduate to that, right? Customers are demanding, and that's what a big part of this article is about now with agentic purchasing options. But what is that impact on our inventory? And do we have enough inventory because of the potential demand spikes that come from this? So I enjoyed this article.
Yeah, it was good. Really well done.
Why don't we the one article there, Tom, about GM wants makers to pull supply chains from China. We don't need to go into that in depth. I just did think it was interesting to start seeing more about that idea of you've got, we've talked a bunch in the last year, about onshoring or nearshoring, but never about, if you think about, right, this is probably a misstatement, but I'm going to make it anyways. There's probably not too many items out there that have more OEM components in it than a vehicle. The amount of, whether it's not just the seats, it's the wiring harness that goes with the seats, and it's the air conditioning unit. And it's not just that you got the air conditioning unit from Delphi, but it's who are their 7 vendors that Delphi uses in that for lighting or whatever it might be. So every component has so many vendors behind it in a vehicle. So in this case, GM's saying, hey, you know what? Let's do what we can to get this supply chain out of China, and putting pressure on their vendors at the same time to say, we need to do this, you need to do this, because how you do things impacts us being able to get our cars down the assembly line.
Yeah, so you said, right, because you have OEM parts that are disruptive or major cost changes and all these different pieces of the puzzle.
We can't get the wiring harness for the Ford Explorer on time.
Right.
We can't push Ford Explorers.
Or at a budget that we understand. Or
well said. Right. Exactly right. The budget component's huge as well.
That's right.
So good. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go into e-commerce and marketing.
Okay.
Speaking of what we were just talking about with agentic tools, Amazon Business launches AI tools to automate. I swear to God, it's like pouring out my window here.
Yeah.
It just all I hear is rain, and I have the windows closed, and I look out, and there's like water, like a river running down the street here.
You gonna go play in the mud later?
I'm going to get my little rubber boat out and send it down the.
You should drive down. Let's go up. Let's get a couple of the guys and go up to Long Beach and go to the Ivy Bowl and play football in the mud like we used to.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, that'll be good for your cold. Yeah, that's good. Smart.
and my knees.
Yeah, your knees. Yeah.
Okay, I digressed. I digressed to our childhood. Tom and I are childhood friends. We grew up.
Where was that Ivy place? Where was that?
It was right underneath the edge of the bridge on the Appian Way Bridge off Appian Way by the Sea Scout base in Alamitas Bay.
Okay.
Remember that? So there's that big loop off of Appian Way to go up onto the Davis Bridge over Alamitas Bay. And there was that Ivy Bowl with that big slope that came down when it rained. The grass in that little park just got flooded. Yeah. Okay. Talk about digressing. I'm
excited about that. Let's get on it.
That was like 47 years ago or something like that.
That was just a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
5-10 years ago. So anyway, back to the important stuff here about Amazon.
Bob has thoughts about AI in the comments here.
Bob does?
Yeah.
What's that?
He's just commenting about some of the challenges with AI. So we know those come from.
Yeah. Well, he's right about complexity adding potential nodes of failure. Right. And I do agree that AI and the introduction of AI is potentially making things more complex. But the return on investment for the complexity, right? And obviously that's what everybody's looking at is, yes, there will be some complexity, and maybe there's a deeper level of understanding that's required. The lemonade stand, that was over at the golf course, Bob. So the lemonade stand was at the golf course over by my house. This was not over at the Ivy Bowl, but we should have probably done that. So, but anyway, I'm just getting all distracted here. But
so that's when we get comments.
This thing.
Yeah. Well, hey, before you do that though, let's just you were making some interesting comments, and I think this is very valuable to talk about, right? And I think why it's important, what you were commenting, and I'm going to say fatigue, use the word fatigue in a couple of ways in a moment. We've been talking a lot with our team. We have a call it's just a few minutes before 10. We have a call at 11 today with our team that is on the software development side, looking at some enhancements and some new agentic tools that we're getting ready to launch in 2026 within LeadSmart and our channel cloud solution. But I think as I think about this, right, is I'm trying to just describe this best as this thought hits my mind. I spend the majority of my travel is to events and conferences and buying group events, trade events, and so forth, including quite a few events that are put on by some of the media companies out there, call them media companies, content companies, regarding AI. And everybody has a speaker about AI. I have a series of talks I give related to AI that include a lot of discussion about AI. What we're seeing, though, is so much right now of the conversation about agentic AI, the things that it's going to do. We're going to be able to solve cancer using AI. We're going to be able to do all these different things. But in reality, the vast majority of people are doing a couple of things. They might be using a software tool that is doing, I'll call it from the point type products. They might be using a product to do maybe capture some invoice data from emails, things like that. They are trying to probably figure out Copilot. They might be using our Genius Feed solution if they're LeadSmart customers that are, bringing up ideas and opportunities of things that they can and risks that they might be wanting to address in their business. But I think from a full scale standpoint across the business, I think there's probably some fatigue right now of all the discussion versus what have we really been able to get access out of without some we've talked to a number of people who have just literally gone out and bought ChatGPT licenses for their whole company, right? There's so many potential risks with that, from, guardrails that need to be in place about data that's being shared, about what's being asked and so forth. But I think the reality of it is we've got a lot of excitement and exuberance, and then we have a lot of hallucinations and hiccups that we see, right? I saw one of the recaps that Lily that does the recaps for us for the show using some AI tools. This morning, it said 37 days was how long the government shutdown was, one of the recaps of the articles for us, right? Versus 43 days. So I think there is that. I don't know if fatigue's the right word, but I think people need something more to hold on to and grasp within their businesses and their lives. And they have some cautions because there's so much hype. But when will cancer be solved, right? When will some of these things truly happen? I don't know your thoughts on that. I think, you have the Gartner trough of disillusionment, right? Where you have the hype. Right. Good point.
You have the trough of disillusionment. I think we're definitely, if not going into the trough of disillusionment, because yes, I think the breadth of the vision around AI that has been discussed, the breadth and depth, if you want to call it that, and the vision of that has exceeded what is actually possible and taking place today, right? That doesn't mean that it cannot take place tomorrow or the next day, but today. And, Bob had mentioned about complexity, right? And this is what I'm finding when you get into AI agents there is a lot of complexity in organizations. I'm finding there's a lot of, even in our customers, there's a lot of, I'll just call it unnecessary complexity that has been incorporated because of manual processes and manual things that are in there. So when you're trying to unravel that complexity and look at how you actually automate that using some of these agents and other tools, even if the AI aspect of it is good enough or works well enough, it really gets in the way of that because you're having to unravel this complexity that exists in the organization in order to automate and streamline something. I think that is a risk. It is a risk, but I think it's a risk we're going to have to work through, and some companies will and some won't.
Yep.
But I'll just give you one example. We had a manufacturing customer of ours I was working with this week, and they get web forms filled out, but the web form has like a free form paragraph that you're supposed to type in, all of your information about why you're reaching out. It could be a problem. It could be a sales request. It could be a number of different things, but it's not a pull down type thing. It's a free form text file. Well, the complexity that goes on with those forms, with how they get emailed to somebody, then somebody reviews them, then somebody decides who should be getting a hold of them, what should happen with it at that point. A lot of them fall through the cracks. They don't get handled at all of those types of things. All that process is ripe for a couple of decent agents to go through it, right? But if I don't unravel the complexity of those things, I can't then define the workflows that go with them. So there is a lot of complexity that's going to have to be unraveled in organizations in order for them to be able to fully take advantage of the next chapter of AI.
And you're building those tools, right?
Well, I'm building the tools, but it still doesn't change the fact that we have to work with the customer to unravel the complexity, right? Yeah. Putting the tools in by themselves without unraveling and streamlining the complexity and the processes isn't going to do it much good.
Was talking to somebody the other day about using your favorite word of reminding me that there's no such thing as auto magic.
Yeah, there's no such thing as auto magic. Yeah,
right.
And there's
no matter what I might tell a customer, it's not auto magic for you guys to just go do it, right?
Yeah.
Very good. All right, what's next? Let's ping through a few of these before we have to go today.
This article here I thought was quite good. AEO optimization checklist: how to make your press releases more visible. We've talked about.
So we're in our e-commerce and marketing section, right?
We are, yes. And we've talked about answer engine optimization versus search engine optimization. I think we've talked about that a few times in the past. But one of the things that they said really can help your optimization with with the AI engines are press releases. Because press releases are organized in generally a very clear and repeatable structure, right? Almost all press releases are organized in a similar way and so forth. And so the ability to have press releases, make it organized the way they are, make it easy for the AI to digest that data and then utilize it in a answer type format.
And
right?
AEO is
designed to be able to be an answer. Here's some things and here's some answers to what actually occurred.
Right. And let's just clarify what AEO is, right? That's the evolution of SEO or agentic engine optimization versus the traditional search engine optimization, correct?
Yeah. So if I go to ChatGPT and I say, what's the best Mexican restaurant in Ventura? Right. And it comes back with, some restaurants in Ventura. That's through an answer engine. It's not through a search engine. If I go to Google, it's the same thing. Yep. But more and more of us are using answer engines versus the traditional search engines that are there.
Tom, what is the best Mexican restaurant in Ventura? I know you've tried most of them.
I haven't found it yet. I'm still looking.
Okay. So there's no Pepe's that you found yet, like your old house?
Did you hear about Casa Sanchez in Long Beach?
No, tell me.
It burnt down yesterday.
What?
Yes, it did.
You know what? I follow the Long Beach Fire Department on Instagram, and I did see something.
I was going to send something out to our group chat, but I didn't do it. I need to do that.
I'm concerned for your brother's wellness.
Yeah, it was a sad day. But they have a GoFundMe page, and they've already raised a lot of money, and they claim they're going to reopen it. It's been there since 1975. So,
wow. We have digressed more about dumb stuff today than I think we have ever had.
Yeah. We'll have editor John remove all this.
Yeah. John's probably going to have a lot of fun with this today. Let's see. We go back to lemonade stands, football in the rain, and Casa Sanchez burning down. So,
yeah. Well, do you remember what Casa Sanchez was before it was Casa Sanchez?
I don't.
It was an A&W root beer.
Oh.
Right. Do you remember A&W root beer places you'd go into? Yeah. You pull up and they'd bring it to your car.
Yeah.
That's what it was before Casa Sanchez.
So far inland from where I grew up. We didn't go up that way that often.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was pretty far. Yeah.
Well, growing up for me, 7th Street was like the valley. right?
Yeah, you couldn't cross that street. You were forbidden to cross that street.
That's exactly right. If I had to go over that little hill, heaven forbid. Oh my word! Why do people tune in and listen to this stuff?
They probably aren't. They're probably gone. So let's move on to something else.
Let's talk about something relevant here. All right, but anyways, that I think is a good discussion. And if at this point of the game, right, if people aren't thinking about adding, answer engine or agentic search optimization in, and you're a marketer, right? If you're a marketer working for a distributor, there are all kinds of issues, right, related to agentic search and online purchasing that are coming that I think executives in organizations need to be understanding from their marketing team and their e-commerce teams. Really, what does this mean to the business? We had that article earlier in that we were talking about, right, from the standpoint of the changes going on, this and the importance of growing with e-commerce and expanding out your e-commerce offering. And if you're doing that, I guess the way to put it would be, if you're an executive, put it this way, if you're how would I describe this? If you're an e-commerce or a marketing person responsible for e-commerce or an e-commerce manager, and you're not working on AEO or answer engine or agentic engine optimization, or don't have that on your roadmap to be doing very quickly, change and get that going, right? Because you need to be doing that. If you're an executive that has a e-commerce and or marketing team working on e-commerce reporting up to you, if you're not hearing them talk about AEO, ask the question, because you need to be working on that in your organization.
But the low-hanging fruit for putting up your press releases, that's a great way to get started.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? I mean, because most every company has press releases, and a lot of times they're not on their website.
Yeah.
Right. Or if they are, they're in like a PDF format or whatever, so look into that. And I mean, that's a quick and easy way to at least starting and get into the game.
It's great. Good. Where do you want to go next?
Well, I think this ties into Bob's point. He says, I miss the days of having a tray on your car window, simpler times. Well, in the new world of this, we have robots.
That's right.
Like there's coming out here. So yeah, I could totally see like a drive up where the robot comes out and brings your food and your drinks and all that kind of stuff. And the agent in your car has already put the order in for you and all of that. But this article is really good. It's a detailed comparison of two advanced humanoid robots. It compared the Atlas robot from Boston Dynamics with the Tesla Optimus robot, and kind of they're different. It's a little hard to see. You can kind of see them on the screen here. The Optimus robot is on the right. The Atlas robot is on the left. I think this weighs almost 250 pounds, the Atlas robot, and the Optimus is about 125 pounds. So this one's much more bigger, but the Atlas robot is designed to be very, a lot of heavy lifting, literally a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of, I think it can do backflips, I think it said, very mobile, all of that kind of stuff, whereas the Optimus is a bit more generally in place there. But good article explaining the two of them and where they're at and what's coming and kind of the use cases for both. You're on mute, but I see your lips moving.
Isn't that how you like me on mute?
I did. It was great.
Yeah. Starting to rain here, by the way. I think I would, this might be something to get working on for next year of doing a Around the Horn 2.0. I'd love to get a bunch of research done on all of these tools, all of these robots, where they're at, when the likelihood is of them coming to fruition, maybe play some videos, doing a little show about that. But really looking at, the use cases for the future. I talk all the time about having these in a warehouse. It could, could have an exterior one and an interior one that's keeping count on your racks of storage items that you have outside in your warehouse or outside of your warehouse facility. It could be, your security monitor. It could have sensors in it that are carbon monoxide or flame and fire sensors and so forth. So many things could be done. I mean, imagine if you had a series of robots in your warehouse and you had some outside of your warehouse that all had flame or fire and smoke sensors in them, as well as carbon monoxide sensors, and they're grabbing fire extinguishers long before and automatically call the fire department, but they're grabbing fire extinguishers to put a fire out before the fire department arrives in your warehouse or your home when you're away, right? I think the big issue is if you were to look at this picture, and I don't know if there's any way to expand that, but if you were to look at this picture, it looks like the Optimist robot is way ahead on the on the hands. And I think I mentioned this when we were talking a little bit about.
I think more consumer use and the dexterity and things is more.
Right.
It needs to be a bit more have more dexterity than the other one.
I heard Elon Musk on a podcast. Would have been in September, I believe. I just remember where I was driving, and I was in Houston visiting with one of our customers there, and my way home from an event in New Orleans with Hardy, and he was talking about it's all about the forearm down, right? Making these things be able to run or do a backflip or climb and do something is really not that difficult in the magnitude or the grand scope of what you need to be able to do from that manual dexterity, right? When you can get to a place where it can hold, it can pick a 2-inch high weed out of your garden, or it can put a, micro screw into a iPhone, and it has that manual dexterity. The ability of these things is going to be phenomenal, because putting cameras and sensors into these things is not going to be difficult. I've used the simple example of having one in your home, number of times is I would assume that we're in a space right now where you could have a camera that could look at your garden and know the difference between sweet peas, Roma tomatoes, squash, and roses, but that dandelion in there doesn't belong. And pick that out. The question is does it have the dexterity to be able to do that or not? Is the question that will come.
Yeah.
So I think it's this. I'm the guy that said, and I've got Max Meister with Ludwig Meister in Munich that has been on the show a number of times. We've got a bet going that when we'll see these things, he thinks I'm a little early. He thinks I'm a couple of years early. So I'm going to Munich for my dinner, and he's coming to Laguna. That's our gig. So,
and maybe we can wrap up with this article. I know your voice is probably giving away here, but
tired of it, huh?
The Tesla pilot line, the Optimus pilot line, right, is working towards being able to produce 1 million units annually. They said it right away it might produce 10,000. The costs are still to be determined. So it's there's conversation that could be as low as around $30,000 each, up to about $50,000 each, which is about the price of a medium-size or mid-size car, or mid-size piece that's there. But they're really looking to ramp up these pieces here. So I think you will see them. I mean, you remember when the first Tesla came out, right? The Roadster one that was there, or the early stages of those. And you saw those every once in a while. I think you'll see the robots starting to, show up every once in a while in the next year. Is it going to be mainstream in everybody's house? No, of course not. But if they're producing 1 million units annually, you'll start to, once that starts to ramp up, you're going to start to see it more. And they are putting a tremendous amount of effort into that dexterity, right? In fact, I would say 80% of their effort is working through the dexterity of the hands and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure right now it can already tell the dandelion from the roses. So,
yep. So he's got for Elon Musk to get to his $1 trillion pay package, they've got to have 2 million vehicle deliveries, 10 million active full self-driving subscriptions, 1 million robots delivered, 1 million robo-taxis in operations, 50 billion in adjusted EBITDA. Anyways, it goes on from there. So, I think we're going to see a lot of these. We won't go into this, but one of the interesting things, you're seeing so much more discussion now about having data centers that are in space because the cooling issues go away and so forth. So, one of the discussions I heard as well about
underwater too.
Yeah, underwater is another source, right? But the space component of it, who gets to go do that, right? Who's got the the fleet of rockets that can take those up and get them running and so forth. But one of the components of these robots was to get them, one of Musk's thing is, hey, we've got to colonize Mars. Well, put all the sensors on a humanoid robot and have them go build a house or somewhere, on Mars, and then get all that data back and forth and back and forth. And we think about, when we were kids in the first spacewalk, right? All the things that they brought back. Just get a landing unit that lands in Mars and drops off 100 robots to go out, and let's just get the telemetry data back and see what they get from it. So we're living in a unique and interesting time, I guess, is the thing, my friend.
I think that's an understatement. All right. Well, there's a few other good AI articles in here. We will not cover them.
Yep. Some good stuff in our sales and M&A component as well. If you scroll back for just a second, we'll kind of hit that. There's good article there from Manufacturing Dive about industrial M&A ramps up as tariffs settle in, right? So there might have been a little bit of pause on some M&A stuff. Although I tell you, as I work every Thursday afternoon to kind of curate the newsletter, it's astounding to me. We only put a handful of the actual acquisitions that I'm reading about each week. There's in the industrial world, in the world that we kind of target, I'll just say building materials, industrial, some of those arenas, construction supplies, so forth, there's 3 to 5 every week, and we only typically, talk about a couple of them. So pretty significant change. But now this article is talking about that they'll even scale up a little bit more based upon some kind of more understanding with tariffs in place. There was a good article in a handful of articles in our leadership segment as well. But one of the things was talking about 3 in 10 firms plan to replace workers with AI next year. It's a good read because there's some pluses and minuses to going about all of that. And then also a good article there about why change management always fails and how to do it right. And change management is such a big factor in technology adoption as well. Sure. So some good articles to continue there.
Let's, if you can remember, let's leave that 3 in 10 firms for next week.
Okay.
I think there's some really good things to talk about in there. You keep hearing about AI taking jobs and all that, but I think there's some good things to unpack in there.
Well, the change management one is good too. So I don't know that we probably won't put them in the newsletter, but we can talk about them as well. And then the last thing that we alluded at the beginning of the show is that even though billions of pennies are still in circulation, and the last coin that was discontinued by the U.S. government was in 1857, our little copper penny, Mr. Lincoln.
So what coin was discontinued in 1857?
A half penny, a half cent.
Okay.
Yeah. So no more Mr. Lincoln on the penny as of this week.
Yeah, but they're still in production and they still can be accepted as legal currency for sure.
Yep.
They just will no longer be created anymore.
They are not going to make them further. Production has ended after 230 years. It costs
1.76 cents to make a penny. So the ROI is not really there.
So should I hold on to all of them that I have so I can sell them later?
A bunch too. I think there's a lot of people that's probably hoarded a bunch of those over time.
Can show my granddaughter that's almost 6 months old, little Mercy May. We'll show her a penny when she's 10 and say, "Here,
get a minted one with her birth year on it, like one of those, what do they call them, proof sets or whatever, where they're minted from the year and they haven't been touched and all that stuff."
Yeah, yep. If I ever retire, that's my gift to myself. Will be a bottle of 1964 Petrus Bordeaux from the right bank of Bordeaux in France. Or you could just give me that as a retirement gift.
Yeah, I'll put that down here.
Right there.
Thanks for noting that.
Yeah. So good. Well, my friend, is the rain slowed down?
It slowed down a little. Yeah, it's not quite pouring the way that it was earlier.
It's picking up here, so you've sent it this way.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the discussion today. Thanks for the comments we had. We appreciate everybody being with us. We enjoy the comments that come in. We enjoy and appreciate that everybody put some faith in us to give us an hour and a half of their time each week. If you're listening on the podcast, we're not offended if you listen at 1.2 or 1.5 times. It's how we listen to podcasts. But we're appreciative of you joining us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you enjoy what we do each week and you see some value to it, please hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Apple or Spotify or whatever it is, not only subscribe, but leave a review. If you leave a review, that pushes those algorithms up a little bit and helps this get out in front of more people that might be searching for podcasts. Right now, I think we're, go back and forth between 1, 2, and 3 globally in wholesale distribution. That's a great position to be at, but we'd like to occupy that number 1 spot for on a consistent, ongoing basis. And we can do that by getting in front of more people. But more importantly than that, the value is if you see it, share it with your friends, forward the newsletter to them. We mentioned earlier today, we do this by means of the newsletter around the horn and wholesale distribution manufacturing. We get that out every Friday morning. If you would like to get that newsletter, just let us know at hello@leadsmarttech.com. You can find us, you can find the podcast on LinkedIn. You can certainly go and hit the like button or the follow button on LinkedIn for LeadSmart Technologies. And in closing on all of that, if your company is looking to digitally transform and really take advantage of all the siloed data that you have across your business, bring it into one integrated platform to get deep insights into what's happening at your customer, your sales team, your marketing teams, and across your entire business, we would love to talk to you and share how we can bring that data together in one unified platform, get rid of those silos, and use AI and other tools to bring insights into the growth and accelerating the growth of your company, and even identifying some risks. We would love to share that with you and help you see how many of your cohorts as wholesale distributors and manufacturers are accelerating the growth in their business. So we'll go from there. But Brian, our friend, says he enjoyed my deeper voice. So
well, don't keep it.
The unfortunate part of that, Brian, is that Mrs. Brown is also under the weather. So my Marvin Gaye voice here is going to accomplish nothing for me on a Friday night.
Okay.
So how's that to end on?
That note, have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Be kind, be safe, do good things. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our guests. Each week, we try our best to dig into the topics that are impacting your business. So please reach out to us and let us know how you think we can make the show better, or topics you'd like for us to tackle or talk about more often, and even guests you'd like to see join us. We're looking forward to bringing you next week's session, and hope that until then, you stay safe, stay focused, and do great things. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review to help others in wholesale distribution get access to the conversation. And finally, please check out our sponsor, LeadSmart Technologies, and their manufacturing and wholesale distribution industry CRM, customer intelligence, and channel collaboration platform. That's LeadSmart Technologies at leadsmarttech.com.